This morning, Team USA men's basketball road to a fourth straight gold medal, starting with a detour. France closing on a 16-2 run, taking down the Americans 83-76 to open the Tokyo Olympics this morning. The loss snapping a 25-game Olympic winning streak dating back to 2004 for Team USA. Now, more now on how this game ended. Team USA was up 74-67 with 3:41 left in the game, but they were outscored 16-2 by France in the final 3 minutes, 40 seconds. The U.S. missed all 9 field goal attempts in that time, 6 of them from beyond the arc.
The Tokyo Olympics are years in the making and are scheduled to open this Friday. But with COVID cases rising in Japan and over 70 positive cases at the Olympics already, the head of organizing committee for the Games did not rule out a last-minute cancellation, and this certainly would be last minute. Toyota announcing on Monday that it's pulling Olympics-related TV advertising in Japan during the Games. That's because of polling showing a majority of Japan's population opposed to the Games being played. However, they will continue to advertise in other markets, including right here in the United States. Max, should Team USA back out of the Olympics?
No, I don't think right now. I wouldn't say so. I would say, guys, that vaccinations seem to work. And what I mean by work is we're hearing a lot about the Delta variant. And what, you know, I don't claim to be an expert in it, and I don't know how many people are given the newness. But as to my understanding, hospitalizations are, the overwhelming majority of them are from the unvaccinated. So the vaccines seem to be working. And for that reason, Stephen A., I don't see why, if our athletes want to compete and there will be an Olympic Games, they shouldn't be allowed to compete. My caveat would be if they're vaccinated. There's not, I mean, unless you have a real good medical reason not to get vaccinated, it should be required if you want to go compete. And that, if I made the rules, I would say that if if our athletes are vaccinated, Stephen A., twice, they get, you know, but if it's Pfizer, Moderna, whatever you get, you're fully vaccinated. You quarantine after you get there, you get tested and everything before you come back and all that, and quarantine again. It seems to me that we should be okay, and our athletes should be okay based on the evidence, you know, that we presently have. So I just don't feel at this point, if there will be an Olympics and our athletes are vaccinated and they'll be tested, why they should be denied the opportunity if they want to go and compete.
Max and Molly work with me on this because I'm usually more definitive in my opinions. It's hard for me to be that way here because I need to learn more. What I will say, Max and Molly, is this. We're talking about the Tokyo Olympics. We're talking about a populace that, what did they say? I think the number was 21% vaccinated. Is that accurate? I'm not sure.
I don't know off the top of my head, Stephen.
I don't know. I thought I read that somewhere. I don't know. What I will tell you is this. Molly, you introed the subject by highlighting for us that most of the people there don't want the Olympics.
Oh, yeah, I had
because
it. Oh, go ahead. I thought you wanted the quote. Go ahead.
Yeah, because of what has transpired. And so my attitude is this. There is a global pandemic taking place, and the local population is so concerned about it that they don't want the Olympics. That's enough for me to strongly consider cancellation. When you have 70 cases, when you have the international community descending upon one province, one area, and that area, people, the inhabitants there, they don't want it. That's something that we should be taking into consideration. Now, maybe that's not the definitive that's not the definitive reason why that should, where it says, okay, that's the reason we're not going to have the Olympics, or we're not going to care about this, or we're going to have the Olympics. That's one of the strongest reasons to consider postponing or flat out canceling the games. But then we also have to take into consideration, Max, what we just alluded to. about how you have people just here in this country alone. We can only speak about the United States, intelligently as far as I'm concerned in terms of what we're experiencing here, what we've endured here, and what we know based on the reports that we've read, et cetera, et cetera. We've got a lot of folks here that President Biden had said that, he had hoped that by July 4th, that 70% of the American population would be vaccinated. And the number hadn't even reached 50%. We just heard Paul Feinbaum talk about, how there's so many people in the South that don't believe in vaccinations, haven't been vaccinated. We just talked about the SEC, to get micro here, where in terms of SEC football, only 6 of the 14 teams have received 80% vaccination, so the other 8 have not. And so if we're talking about just that in this country, and then in other countries, you're either having people make those choices, or there are people who would like to be vaccinated, but there aren't enough vaccines to distribute and disseminate to the masses. Well, now we're talking about essentially, potentially endangering the world. We can talk about all the things, all the safety precautions and measures that the Olympics have put in play to ensure that, things don't become worse. But there is the Delta variant out there, which we're learning more about each and every single passing day, how it's potentially more contagious, how if you haven't been vaccinated, it can really harm you, how contagious it is, et cetera, et cetera. At a time like that, do we need to do anything global?
Maybe not,
I would
Stephen A.
question that. I
Maybe
don't
not.
know.
Maybe
I
not.
would question it, though.
I think it's a legitimate question. I also don't think that we are necessarily responsible for the vaccination rates of the populations of other countries, although certainly we can help because
I'm not saying we are.
We have a lot of vaccines. But as long as our athletes are vaccinated and precautions are taken, if the Olympics does go on and our athletes want to compete and they've been vaccinated, I'm not against them competing.
Yeah, but they're not mandating that everyone be vaccinated, and that's where the
That's
problem
why
lies.
I'm bringing that exactly. That's why I'm bringing that up.
Stephen A., the IOC president said last week, 85% of the Olympic Village residents are vaccinated, 100% of the IOC members. But obviously, yes, the athletes are not required. And,
Just dealing with new players, these guys that haven't played together before. They're also playing on limited practice time. Some just flew in off of the NBA Finals. How does this team improve this chemistry, Tim?
Well, it's tough because, listen, one of the problems that Team USA deals with is when you throw together a group of basically all-stars, their roles are completely different than what they are playing for their teams in the NBA. And as a result, you could see it in the way the two teams played today, the difference. Evan Fournier was the guy that was clearly the focal point for Team France. So he gets 22 shots. He gets into a rhythm. He feels like he's playing in an NBA game. For Team USA, it's a little bit different. You go long stretches without getting touches or shots. The only player on their roster that really had a run of rhythm was Jrue Holiday at the beginning of the fourth quarter when he had a little individual run that got Team USA that big lead there late. But for the most part, it's a bunch of guys trying to figure out how to accept a different role, play together on the fly. Very difficult. They also, Ash, they have lost that awe factor. And when they played these teams in the past, typically that off factor was worth 10, 15, 20 points. These teams now are not really intimidated because they have a lot of NBA players on their roster. They're used to seeing these guys throughout the course of an NBA regular season and even a postseason, so they're not really intimidated. They believe they can go out there and they can operate and they can play well. But for me, the biggest factor of all was the fact that the French team looked like a normal basketball team with a pecking order offensively, other guys filling roles. For Team USA, it's really a my turn, your turn type of offensive flow, and that's going to create some problems. They will get better each and every day of this tournament. The longer they're together, the more time they have together. You had some guys that just joined the team, haven't even practiced with them yet, really, coming from the NBA Finals. Once they incorporate everybody day after day and get a little bit more sense of desperation defensively, I think you're going to see Team USA continue to get stronger and stronger. Certainly, they should win their next 2 pool games without a problem. And then you get into that single elimination format where they will be tested in trying to win a gold medal.
Yes, certainly. I mean, you talk about what France did so well and how their scoring was just evenly balanced and it was working together. They finished the game on a 16-2 run. I mean, that's how you close out a game. How does USA combat when other teams are doing things like that? What do they improve on when really a team is just dominating one side of the game like that?
I think a couple of things they need to rely on. First is they need to understand that there's more to the game than the three-point line. And if you take a look at the way they closed it out, there were possessions when it looked like they were hunting the three-point shot. And I think they're going to serve themselves well by understanding they're going to be able to beat their man off the dribble pretty much any time they want to. Play some more drive and kick game. Get into the mid-range area of the floor. Get to the rim. Don't fall in love with the three-point shot. That's not necessarily the strength of this team. And if they do that, I think they're going to be in good shape. Because I don't think that these teams are going to be able to keep Team USA in front of them off the dribble, but they really got away from that as they got deeper into this game and they settled. I think oftentimes, even if it's an open shot, I think it's a settle sometimes because they can beat their man off the dribble, dominate the mid-range area of the floor, and get to the rim. And I think the other thing, defensively, they need to understand their athletic ability is their biggest asset. Their quickness, their length, their ability to recover, their ability to guard the three-point line. That you only saw one real desperate spurt out of this team, and it was at the start of the fourth quarter. And it ended up getting them a 7-point lead. Now, they weren't able to close the deal late. Their offense really let them down. But I think that desperation needs to start with the opening tip and understand they're going to have to work for 4 quarters against these teams. But ultimately, their speed should be something that disrupts any team's ability to run their offense. France looked very comfortable the entire game, particularly when the game was on the line. That's when they looked their most at ease, and as a result, they get the win.
Yeah, as you can